Hi. Today we're going to talk about one of the cooler things about .NET is you can create what they call extension methods. What extension methods are is a way to take a native type that is native to .NET. It doesn't even have to be native. It's a native type that maybe you don't have the source code to. So maybe it's a class type or something that you've gotten from an external library or something else that you want to add new methods to. So what we'll do is I'll show you a simple thing. We'll do a long. I'm going to call this size. I'll set it to 1024. Let's say that I've got a whole bunch of parts of my code where I have sizes in kilobytes. And what I want to do is have a function where I can pass it the size and get back a string of that size saying how many bytes, kilobytes, or megabytes it is. So to do this in .NET without extension methods, I have my variable here, and I'll just go grab the function. So below this, I can throw in my function here. Let's fix up these names. This is a little function called format bytes. We pass in the long, it does some code over it and kicks it out how many megabytes, gigabytes, kilobytes that particular guy is. So then I'll just make a string. And I'll call this out equals, and then I can call that function format bytes, and I can pass it a size. Now it doesn't want me to use out because that's a reserved keyword, so I'll say out string. Okay, so it wants it to be static because we're in a static class. Okay, so if I were to step over this, come in here, step, we got our size is 124. We step over and it's 124 or 10,024 bytes. So it worked good. We'll test maybe with a bigger number. I'll throw in a bunch of zeros here. We'll step over it and see if it's functioning correctly. Sure enough, it pulled that out. It's 97.66 megabytes. Well, that's great. It's good code, works fine. But now I'm going to show you how to do this in what they call an extension method. So to do that, I'm going to create a new class. And we could do this in our base class here, but I'll put it in a different file. So I'll say I want a new class. I'm going to call this long ext extensions. Now, this is log. I want long. I just called this, it could be anything you want. This is the name of the class doesn't determine whether or not this is an extension method, but it's the signature of the method that does. But this has to be in a static class, and static is .NET's way of saying it's a global. So you can call these static methods without instantiating a copy of long extensions. If that makes sense. So in here, I'm going to create a new function or a new method, which is an extension method. So I'll say public static, and this extension method is going to return a string, and we'll call it the same things it did before, format bytes. Now here's how you tell it that this is an extension method for the type long. The first parameter is a this, and then I long. It's a this long, I long. Okay, so that right there, that format is saying that this is an extension to a long with the variable name that we're going to stick. The variable of itself is going to be called ilong. It's kind of a mind bender, but this format bytes is extending a long because the first argument in the method is a this pointer to a long. So I can replace this with anything. If I want to extend a string, that first parameter would be a this string. If I want to extend, maybe I have a class called a point, the first parameter would be a this point. So by making a static method instead of a static class where the first parameter is a this, you're telling it to extend that object. I'll show you how it looks. So now what I'll do is I'll come over to this function. I'll copy the body of this function, and we'll put it inside of our extension method. and I'll just change these bytes to long. Now it's essentially exactly the same. Nothing changed. You pass in the long, which is itself. It does the logic and returns back how many bytes, kilobytes, whatever. Same thing as did before. Now I come back over here and I can delete this method. I don't need it anymore. And instead of calling format bytes, I say outstring equals size, because that is my variable, the long. And I hit a dot off of that long, and now I have a new method in here, format bytes. Now if you watched my previous video, I talked about how bold items within the IntelliSense are methods built onto that class type, whereas non-bold are extensions. So this is my first extension object, format bytes, and you can see it has on there that takes the long, this long, and it returns back a string. So I can say format bytes, and we can step over this, try it. So step, voila, it's beautiful. So now what I did is, if I have a common set of code, instead of putting that up into, I mean, we easily could have stuck this in some kind of global class, utility class that we use all over the place, and that would work totally fine. But this allows me to extend that so that now I have a common way of formatting bytes on my longs. And I could do another extension method for ints. I could do one for bytes, anything I wanted to do this exact same function. Now what I want to show you is, what if I want to do an extension method that took an argument? So let's say we wanted to get string, and I'll say str1 equals, I want to call something called size dot, give me the left of this, I want the left 4 digits of this long. Okay, so there's the extension method that needs to be written. So I'll pop over to my extensions class, and we'll just put it right here at the top. So public static, and we're going to return a string again. Not static, string. And we're going to call this the left, and we'll take the this pointer to a long, and let's keep the same naming convention, I long. Okay, so this guy, what I want to say, has an extra argument here, which is going to be an int, and it's going to be an I number of digits. Okay? So the first thing I want to do is make sure the long that's being passed in has that number of digits. To do this, I'm going to convert the long to a string. So I'm going to say if the ilong dot toString, which is one of the built-in .NET methods. Almost everything in .NET has a toString because it comes from an object. Because everything's inherited from object, we know I can add that. So I can say toString this guy and give me its length, and say if that is greater than or equal to the I number of digits, then we know we can return, and I could say again ilong dot toString, and then I can say dot give me a substring of this starting at index 0 and give me the length of it to be I number of digits. And if it doesn't match, I'll just return this as a string. So I'll say ilong, I want to return this. Return ilong dot string, toString. Okay? So this will, if we look at the logic here, we're going to convert it to a string, check the length, make sure the length has the number of digits we're looking for. If it does, we get a substring of that converted to a string long, or we take only the first number of digits that you specify. So now we come back over here, you'll see the left is now compilable. And if we step through this code, we got my out string, and now my size is 1024.0.0.0.0. If I should get back 1024. Now I could have had to return an int, I could return a long, I could have had to return a new class. Your return type is just like anything else. My own return type, my own arguments, I can do whatever I want to it. This is a great way to keep your code clean and concise and to extend methods you may not have access to. Very, very cool. That is extension methods.